You are now listening to Protecting Your Nest with board-certified family medicine and obesity medicine specialist Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com. Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Many lessons can be learned from the past. My NEST and ROPE acronym reminds us of the root causes of disease. The E in the ROPE reminds us to hold on to life experiences that serve us while removing or at least learn from the ones that don't. The E also represents emotions. We must control our emotions or they will control us. Today's podcast has a simple purpose: to better understand some of the experiences that are shaping the decisions we are making while controlling our emotions just long enough to pause, gather additional information, and proactively decide what's best for ourselves and our family. Well, what's the big decision? Rather, to get the COVID-19 vaccination. How we individually decide is more complex than what a podcast can offer, but factoring in our life experiences and how our emotions impact us will be key to make the best decision. We will do this by briefly reflecting on the systemic racism that has been part of our experiences in America and by sharing some of the reasons why today's guest and I decided to get vaccinated in spite of that history. Keep in mind, any decision you ultimately make should be made only after gathering as much information as you can. And like a good judge, you will go in the direction that the preponderance of the evidence suggests is the best path forward. When acquiring new information, your source is critical. I engage my accountant for my taxes. I engage my realtor when I need to buy a home. And of course, when I want to learn things that are medical, I go to those who understand medical science. Today, you will hear from me, a frontline clinician who prides himself in relying on evidence rooted in the best science available. And you will also hear from my guest, Rashard Johnson, who is a healthcare leader and who will provide some perspective through the lens of a healthcare administrator. Rashard Johnson is the president of Advocate Trinity Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, and South Suburban Hospital in Hazel Crest, Illinois. He has a master's in health sciences administration from the University of Central Florida and has a huge amount of experience working in hospitals all over the country. Rashard, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the second edition, because you've been with me before, to Protecting Your Nest. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, doing just fine, Dr. Hampton. And trust me, the pleasure is all mine. I am grateful to be here and so thankful for your leadership and all of our heroes on the front line. And I'm just grateful. So thank you for having me. And I'm excited. I'm excited about this topic because this is extremely important for our community. And it's extremely important for everyone to just hear and get an understanding of the why behind where we are. And the goal is to move forward in a positive manner and increase vaccinations.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I am as excited. I've been telling my patients that for those who hadn't decided, we have to have this conversation. I felt like it was literally a community service for us to do this. And I know you reached out to me, which was kind of cool. And you said, let's have this conversation. So I appreciate that. But before we get started, I want to share a little historical perspective about systemic racism. And to provide some perspective, I checked out a video by Vox entitled "The U.S. Medical System is Still Haunted by Slavery." They shared the story of James Marion Sims, whose statue still sits in Central Park, Manhattan. He's famous for creating a vaginal speculum, but he's also known for doing experiments on enslaved Black women since the 1850s, including things like C-sections and oophorectomies, where we take out the ovaries. He did the most experiments on a particular Black woman by the name of Anarcha, along with 11 others between 1845 and 1849. Even after anesthesia was introduced in 1846, he continued to do these procedures without using anesthesia. Imagine how horrific that must have been. But he was not the only one with these practices. It was widespread in the South. How they portrayed this was with nice pictures that suggest what they were doing wasn't all that bad, but is also likely the reason why the belief that Blacks did not feel pain began. In fact, it is not just a belief of the past. Even when recent studies are done, African Americans are systematically undertreated for pain relative to white Americans. A great book to illustrate some of this mistreatment is entitled Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. So check that out if you want to learn more. Prior to the end of slavery, Blacks were considered valuable since they provided free labor. In fact, in 1807, one of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, was once quoted as saying, "I consider a woman who brings a child every 2 years as more profitable than the best man on the farm." Man, just saying that really, shakes me a little bit. And that was the common thinking at that time. Slaves are property that have value. Once slavery ended, however, Blacks became economically invaluable, and the narrative shifted towards the goal of reducing the number of Black babies. In fact, in 1900, this movement was led by Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood. Due to the panic about immigration as well, Margaret and others started to push birth control in people of color. Even worse, in the 1930s, hysterectomies were performed without consent. Imagine getting a surgery for something else like a gallbladder and waking up learning that your uterus was removed. This practice occurred so often that it was called Mississippi appendectomy. You may be thinking, this must be a thing of the past. Well, as recently as the 1990s, when a birth control method called Norplant was created, this product was selectively marketed to Black women, or what they called at the time welfare moms. There are countless other examples, including the well-known syphilis experiments, but I just really wanted to take a moment to provide just enough background just to help anyone listening to fully understand why so many African Americans are hesitant to get vaccinated. In fact, your vocabulary word for the day is enanthrophobia, which means the fear of the healer. So if you're listening and you are wondering why there is hesitation to take a vaccine, I hope my brief historical gave you just some basic understanding of why it exists. So Rashard, as you hear this history, I could only imagine what emotions you must be experiencing. So tell me a little bit about how you feel as I share that information.
Well, the very first thing for me is it tugs at the strings of my heart to hear it. And then I think through vividly, I think through stories that have been told that I've from my grandmother who's still living. And I can't help but go back to that place and think about some of the struggles that she's had to overcome in order for me to sit in the chair that I sit today. And not only her, but my family and then that her entire generation, your family, it really paved the way for us. And the last point I would say, there are people who don't believe that these things are real, or as I've had one of my son's teammates, he plays on the baseball team with my son, his father, as we were talking about the Tuskegee experiment and syphilis. And he told me, well, but Rashard, that's so long ago. And I had to explain to him that my grandmother is still living. And the America that she knows is a lot different than the America that I know, and surely a lot different than the America that my kids know. And think about that. And we still say we have a long way to go, but think about the America that she knows. So as you were, as you were reading those stories, it really touched me.
Yeah, it touched me too. Even when I did the research and learned of some of these stories. And some people have already heard them, but it just broke my heart. And I think about the average African American woman who is really, holding our community up because there's so many single family homes and the role they play, and to think about some of the things they had to go through. It's just so many stories out there. In fact, I think I'm going to share a story myself briefly. And then as you hear my story of racism, I want you to think of one to share as well. I actually shared this story with my organization when we did a Facebook Live, and they asked me, questions about how it's impacted me. And I remember as a young, excited resident doctor about to enter the hospital for the first time. And I entered the hospital where I was told where the doctors enter. And by the time I got to where the security officer was, he grabbed me and asked me where I was going. And he then was told by me that, well, I'm a new doctor here. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. But my brain was asking, well, do you grab everybody that's coming into the building? It's like,
Right.
What is that all about, right?
Right, correct.
And so I did a little experiment. I said, let me ask my colleagues, none of which were African American. It was a residency program of 12 of us, I think. Nobody else had an experience like that. Another thing that happened before I even got to the hospital is that the police in that particular suburb followed me, at least for a week. They finally pulled me over. And then when I finally told them I was a new doctor, they stopped following me. But the question is, are you following everybody? And I asked my colleagues the same question. They said no. And even though that's nothing compared to the stories I've shared, it still sticks with me that I was grabbed, by the way, by an African American security guard, meaning that our culture is so, disrespectful of people of color that even the people of color disrespect each other because there's this fear or concern that people of color can't be doctors. They can't be administrators like yourself, Rashard. So that was my story, and I could probably share more, but tell me what comes to mind when you think about the experiences you've had personally with racism.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. I had a chance to watch that Facebook Live, and I was extremely proud of you for speaking up. And because oftentimes people that are in our positions, they don't share those stories. I stayed up really late the night before last, just going back and forth with some brothers that I call my president circle. So some young hospital presidents all over the country. It's 4 of us.
Oh, nice.
And it's a great brotherhood to have conversations. But the reason I stayed up late, and I'm going to get to my story, the reason I stayed up late was because one of them just mentioned to me that he can't be himself. And he's afraid that if he's himself at work and people know truly who he
really is,
he'll be escorted out the door as the other brothers have.
Wow.
I kid you not.
Wow.
Kid you not. This is a conversation. And I'm very passionate about this subject because I truly believe that when God places you in positions, I mean, we've all been delivered and been blessed to escape poverty, escape the ghetto. And so I truly believe that when you have a platform, it's not for you to make money or making money is good, right? I won't say that, but it's not for you to self-indulge. It's to utilize that platform and
that's right.
And open up the doors and get people to understand why we behave the way we behave, why we think the way we think, why we move the way we move, and understand the environments that we were raised in and how a lot of it were survival things we had to do to make it out. And so I try to bring the culture with me everywhere we go for that exact reason that you mentioned. Everywhere I go, in every room, I am me, and I bring the culture with me. And I make sure they understand that I listen to rap music. Yes, you'll see me around the hospital with my socks hat and it's tilted to the side.
Yeah, full disclosure to anybody listening. He definitely listens to rap music.
That's right. I had it on when you came to my office, right?
That's right.
But I think it's important. It's important to embrace diversity. It's important to embrace your culture. And no one, regardless of where you come from, whether you're rural America, whether you're in urban America or suburban America, no one should be afraid of their culture with what makes them them.
It's actually your greatest asset. I've learned. Like once I got comfortable in an environment where I tended to be the only person of color in the room, and hopefully that'll continue to improve, I found that me being Tony was the secret sauce, in a way. And I didn't have to be like somebody else.
That's right.
I totally agree with that.
That's right. Because it creates diversity of thought. But then it also, as I was explaining to him, we need people like you to help show the way.
Right.
Because you have the commonality that's built, and you have an influence factor that you don't know you have. Right. And so when you mentioned that story about just being categorized and put in a box, I immediately thought through that. But from a racism standpoint, I've experienced it all. You know, I've been pulled over and profiled. I've had some of my guys growing up in high school in Liberty City and Carroll City area had guns pulled on us by the police.
Wow.
I mean, you name it. But I think the thing that cut me the most was actually in a hospital where I served as chief operating officer over the market.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of rounding and try to get out and touch base with team members, touch base with my physicians. I'm a people's person. I love people from all walks of life. I love people. I love to learn about people, and I just love to touch my people. And so as I'm out rounding, I was on a unit, and there was a belligerent patient. And so security was there. Our police officers were there, a couple African-American police officers, and we had nurses and doctors and techs and sort of the whole rapid surge team to kind of decompress this patient. So it was really like the United Nations, right? There was a couple of Black security officers.
That's right.
And this particular patient was spewing the N-word left and right to these security officers, left and right. And so when I came up, you know, I'm just making sure everything's fine and with the team, making sure they're okay. And immediately he locked eyes with me and he says, "Oh, now you bring the monkey in the suit."
Oh, no.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, yes. He says, "And you're just a monkey in the," and he kept repeating it. "You're a monkey in the suit. And y'all think this monkey in the suit is gonna help save y'all," you know? And so,
oh my goodness.
Now think about who you're talking to now. Now, I mean, you know me very well. You know my family very well.
Right.
You see, I have a picture of my home where I grew up. When you come in my office, when I leave the office, right? And so with that environment, growing up as an inner city kid in the ghetto, you know, one thing you're taught, and you know this, disrespect is not tolerated.
You can't even look at anybody without,
That's right.
Yeah.
You can't even step on people's shoes without saying, "Excuse me."
Right. You better clean out the shoes while you're at it.
That's right. And many people have lost their lives over disrespect.
It's so true.
And so, and you're trained in order to defend yourself to disrespectful people. That's just fight. You have to fight your way through. And so for me, that's ingrained in me, and my natural instinct is that, right?
That's the question I have. How did you retain your, how did you kind of keep your cool in that moment?
Through the grace of God.
You're an athlete too. I mean,
and I'm an athlete. Yeah.
Football now.
Great point. Football. And in football, everything you do is engaging and physical.
Right. And
in football, my coach used to always say, make sure you impose your will on the next man. So you're taught that instinctively. And I would say I have a praying grandmother, because I realized though that look how far my family has come.
That's right.
One.
That's right.
And then look how many people I've been able to touch that didn't even know this position existed.
That's right.
And if I engage right now with him the way that I would normally engage, I'd lose everything.
Yeah, everything could be gone.
Lose everything.
That's right.
But in every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. And so at the end of that, several of my doctors and nurses, all, Caucasian or Asian and different different ethnicities, but mostly Caucasian, came and they were crying in my office afterwards. And they were just so embarrassed.
That's right.
And so hurt because they know the father I am, the husband I am, the man that I am, and the teammate I am to them, and the consummate professional. And they were crying. And I told them, this is an education moment and something you can take forward and teach others that doesn't think this is real. This is real, right? And so you can help join the fight for ensuring that we have equity, equality, and that we go against conscious or unconscious biases, And so that was the toughest moment for me.
Yeah, it sounds like in fact, I'm thinking about the cell phone that's in my pocket and how it has really allowed for us to see things that we couldn't see.
Correct.
Thankfully. And thankfully they have cops with, body cams and things like that. But most people never see these things. And because they don't see it, it's not important to them. But then when you see it right in front of you and you already got a relationship with this person who was impacted. In fact, what I find is that a lot of people I see in leadership roles and politics, they don't seem to understand until it happens to their family member.
Correct.
Rather we're talking about gay and lesbian issues, or we're talking about, being treated unfairly. So I think it's important that we give people these images. This podcast is helping to do that. And I'm just so thankful that we have this platform to do that. So, and I know we're both, African Americans as we shift a little bit towards this vaccine. And we decided to get the vaccine in spite of that history we shared. I want you to talk a little bit about your apprehensive, you were probably apprehensive about getting it. So tell me a little bit about, were you apprehensive? And if you were, how you overcame it? What was kind of going through your mind?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And first of all, for the record, in full disclosure, Dr. Hampton he's my PCP. So you're my primary care doc.
That's right.
And really the impetus behind this spurred from my apprehension and the conversation that you and I had, which really helped put me at ease and put me in a space where I can move forward. And I thought through, and my mother always raised me and my brother and I to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. So if you see a woman, treat her like it's your mother. If you see a man, treat him like it's your brother, etc. Right?
That's right.
And so immediately I think through, what if I feel like this as the president of 2 hospitals and I'm privy to doctors I can call.
That's right.
Every expert
That's right.
you can imagine I have at my fingertips. I'm blessed with that, right?
No doubt.
That's one of the spoils of the job, having the experts right by your side.
That's right.
And if I feel vulnerable or I feel like I can't trust it or I'm apprehensive, that's a huge problem. Imagine the person that imagine that frontline hero.
That's right.
Or imagine someone in the community that may not even have anyone in healthcare. And so the first thing for me, I was worried about the time frame, right? I was, this thing is coming out too soon.
That's right. That's right.
How many people have taken it and how many years ago did they take it and what happened, right? I was immediately worried about the time frame. And then I was worried about the privatization of it and just from a capitalization standpoint. And in the Bible, it says money is the root of all evil. And so I started thinking through, okay, well, you're trying to make money off this thing. You're just going to rush it and push it and make billions of dollars. So I was worried about that. And then the history like we just talked about of medicine, and then in particular persons of color and experiments that we know exists, right?
That's right.
History serves us correctly in this particular situation. We know this. So
that's right.
Those 3 things. And the final component of it is, for me, I'm blessed. I work in an office. I don't necessarily work on the front lines as you do in our other heroes. And so I didn't want to also take up vaccines that our heroes can have vaccines if necessary and needed. If anyone needs it, I felt like those whose lives are on the line should be offered first.
That's right.
But then we had 50%. 50% people signed up of our team members, our heroes at Trinity and South Sub signed up to take it. And then my leadership instinct kicked in.
Right.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I can't sit in the corner office or some people call it the ivory tower.
That's right.
I don't think it's 2 ivory, to be honest with you, but that's another story.
It's not bad. It's a big office.
It's a big office now. But that's another story for another day. But I can't sit here and ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself.
True.
All right. And so that started it. And so I went through a series of research. I'm a trust but verify type person. I feel like Ronald Reagan said it best: trust but verify. Right. And so for me, I read the entire report. I had to read the FDA report. And then I started researching colleagues that I know and trust.
That's right.
So Derek Robinson, shout out to Derek Robinson. Dr. Derek Robinson is Chief Medical Officer at Blue Cross Blue Shield, Illinois. And he put up a really nice post on LinkedIn around his engagement with his family. And it was entitled, and I'm paraphrasing, it was like, "Doc, are you getting the shot?" Right. And so Dr. Robinson put this up, and I'm like, "Man, Doc, this is really nice." Right. And he talks about ways that why he endorses the shot. Right. Okay. And goes into intricate details. And so after I read his thing, then I called you directly, right, on the cell phone.
I remember that.
And I had specific questions.
That's right.
One, this isn't about me being president of the hospital.
That's right.
This isn't about us being work colleagues.
That's right.
This is about you are my primary care doctor, and you understand more about my health history than, if not more, than my wife and my mother along the same lines, right? So this is a fiduciary responsibility. It's built on trust here, loyalty and trust, right? And so knowing my history, my medical history, what do you recommend for me? That was our conversation.
That's right. And
then I wanted to know, after you answer that, you're my doctor. You're giving me this advice. Are you going to take the shot? Right? So I'm checking the boxes here.
That's right.
I'm checking the boxes. Right? True story. But you said some things that were, and I use this every day now as I go out. I do a lot of rounding on the floors, and I'm telling my journey, my story, because I think a big part of leadership is authenticity and being able to be vulnerable and let people know I'm human like you.
That's right.
I have a family like yours, and, I have nicknames they call me like they have nicknames they call you. I mean, right? The same walk of life. And I want you to understand that just because you see the suit, the shirt and tie, this is not a Teflon person underneath that.
Love it.
And so I tell that story. But the two things you told me, you said, Rashard, well, you're going to get vaccinated one of two ways. You're right. You're laughing because it's a true story, right? You said, the first way, you're around it all the time. You're in a hot spot.
That's
it's
right.
all throughout the community.
That's right.
Is you can catch it. And you said, I'm scared of the virus. And I said, whoa, wait, hold up, Doc. What do you mean you scared of the virus? You're like, I'm scared of the virus because you don't know how your body will react to this virus.
That's right.
You might fight it. You might do well. You might fight it, do well, and then have long-term side effects. You might not fight and do well, and then you're not here.
That's right.
So the question is, are you willing to take that gamble? And then you were like, and the second way you're going to get vaccinated is you take the vaccine. And you said, personally, I'm taking the vaccine because I'd rather take my chances with the vaccine. It's a true story.
That's right.
But that made all the sense in the world.
Wow.
Made all the sense in the world.
About.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad you called, man. And I'm glad I wasn't sure after the call, what you would do. But as is the case for this podcast, we're just giving information.
Right.
And we're giving a perspective. And my perspective is I've signed a lot of death certificates in 2020.
Right.
And our doctors who were crying when they got the vaccine, particularly the ones that work in a hospital, some of them cried when they got their first dose because they were not only signing death certificates, they were in the ICU having to pronounce people. So it was, and I just had a conversation 2 days ago with a friend of the family having to help them make a decision about the ventilator and a 50-year-old.
Wow. 50. Wow.
So that's what we're facing.
That's young.
But yeah, because I'm 52.
Right. No, it's real.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's real. It's crazy. So for anybody listening, listen, I really think that I hope you hear everything we talk about with just an open mind. And one of the things that people worry about is what is it going to be like if I decide to go in the direction of doing this, right? So I know for me, it wasn't too bad. I had a slightly sore arm, maybe that night. The next day it was sore. And then the day after, third day, it was nothing. So tell me a little bit about your experience about what it was like to get this vaccine.
Yeah, as for me, my symptoms were similar to yours. I liken it to the flu vaccine. I had a soreness within my arm that went away in a couple of days. Same thing that happens with the flu vaccine. I didn't have any side effects, and so I share that story. And I also tell people that we've given the Right Advocate over 50,000 COVID vaccination shots. We've given over 50,000 vaccination shots throughout Illinois and Wisconsin, and very minimum anaphylactic situations and when I think about all the vaccinations that we've given at Trinity and South Sub, we haven't had any adverse reactions that required a higher level of care.
That's
and so
right.
Yeah, some things that I've heard from some of our team members have been felt a little lethargic afterwards within that first 24 hours, maybe a little chills, a little fever, but then that was it, for those 24 hours, and they were fine. And I've taken both shots.
Yeah.
I've taken both shots, and
that's right.
I've taken them here at Trinity for a reason, because we were the highest persons of color, and persons of color are adversely impacted disproportionately by this senseless pandemic and COVID-19. And then we had the lowest compliance rate with vaccination. And so I felt like I needed to step up and walk the talk, in particular on this campus.
Absolutely. And thank you for doing that. And I definitely saw your post trying to flex your muscles. I did. You inspired me to flex my. I said, let me see what I got into the shirt.
I have a pretty wife. You know what I mean? So I have to keep my arms. I never know.
Yeah, well, that's all good.
Never know when I have to, somebody might try me,
You are too much. Let me say this real quick. I know you spoke a little bit about the speed, and I know that was an issue, but I want to say this about the speed real quick. It was fast, but it may be one of the safest vaccines ever created, because they put they had a lot of people, first of all. I think if you take Pfizer and Moderna, you may have 70,000 people, who got into that study. And by the way, they did have 1 out of 3 or so from communities of color. So now we can have faith that what happens in terms of how effective it is effective. So anyway, that messenger RNA that everybody hears about is kind of a simple step. It's a one-step process where with some of these other vaccines, they would actually have to take a messenger RNA and actually create the protein in the lab. And every step of the protein creation, and we're talking about the spike protein as an example here, every step in that creation requires FDA approval. So that would take like years, to be honest. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. And when Pfizer partnered with biotech, the company that has the messenger RNA technology, they were able to do things fairly quickly. But the other part is that money wasn't an issue. So when you take the money off the table, they can do things fairly quickly. So when I looked at the research and understood how it worked, that gave me a lot of confidence. So I want to talk a little bit briefly about, I know when we had our first podcast experience, I think that was episode number 3. We talked a little bit about social determinants of health, and I know, as you've suggested, that at least Advocate Trinity is in a predominantly African American community. So just a few thoughts on other factors that may actually increase the risk of COVID for communities of color. What other factors should people be aware of?
Yeah, when we look at those factors, I can't help but think, and you kind of mentioned this earlier when you talked about our physicians that were crying as they received the vaccination shot because of the experiences that they've seen. 2020 has been unlike anything I've seen. And when you think about the African American community, I think through sort of my family, right? And my family.
And by the way, you got a beautiful family.
Thank you, sir.
I'm checking them out while you're talking, and you got beautiful pictures on your wall, and I love it.
I appreciate it. I am extremely blessed. God has been great. Beautiful wife, 2 girls, 2 boys.
Yep.
My oldest daughter will be 13, and she's turning into like a second wife. You know, she's like, "What time are you coming home from work?" I'm like, "You got another meeting? What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm going into a board meeting."
I saw you looking at your watch.
Exactly. No, I was. I'm telling you, because she's actually home. She's gonna call me soon. But such a blessing to have, and man, my everything for life revolves around them. So,
wow.
No, but when you look at communities of color, I think through my family, aunts, uncles, brother, mom, you go down the line, and we suffer from diabetes, hypertension, COPD, CHF. A lot of these disparities. When you think about lack of education. My mother was the first college graduate, thank God, and in our family, she set the tone, and then I was able to follow, in those footsteps. You think about lack of access,
right,
in communities of color, right, and from a primary care standpoint, we don't have a lot. You're like a unicorn, and so, I mean, I flew my brother from Miami,
right,
to come to the south side of Chicago to see you. Right?
By the way, episode number 2, you got to check that out, guys.
Absolutely. Shout out to Pooh.
Yeah,
appreciate
his nickname.
That's his nickname, Pooh. You didn't know that? Yeah, that's my brother. Hey, that's more like my father, man. He raised me, right? So
wow.
No, absolutely. But think about all the lack of access and just the economic food disparities. All of those things.
That's right.
When you couple them with COVID, our mortality numbers are through the roof.
Yeah. It's
through the roof.
That's right.
The darkest moment, as you share some of the doctors crying, the darkest moment that I've experienced is sitting around the executive boardroom, sitting around a table with my executive team, and we're going through our COVID debrief and realizing that our morgue is overflowing and the funeral home is at capacity. And I had to sign off on refrigerated 18-wheeler trucks to be able to hold the overflowing bodies. And these are people, our people.
Oh my goodness.
Like me, and these are our people that are coming in to the ED acutely ill with comorbidities with COVID, going directly in the ICU, going directly on the ventilator. And at the height of COVID in 2020, they weren't coming off. They weren't coming off. It body bags into that truck. Mentally put a drain on me, something I will never forget for the rest of my life. And so when you think about how we're disproportionately impacted, those aren't statistics to me and to my team and to you, to our heroes, to those who sacrificed their lives on the south side of Chicago in the middle of this pandemic, in the heat of this pandemic, and continue to do so.
That's right.
Those statistics that say people of color are disproportionately impacted, those are body bags that we see.
And it's like I report out when I do my huddle where we talk about what we're going to do for the day and what the teams are looking like in terms of who's there and who's not there. We report out the numbers of people who have succumbed to the virus. And I think today it was in the 120s. That's 120 something people who will not be here for their families. And it's just they feel like numbers sometimes, but then in my building where I work, we lost somebody that was in their 50s. In the building across the street from where I work, we lost somebody in our other Advocate building. So it's really, it breaks my heart that those people who I saw pretty much on a regular basis are not here anymore. So I appreciate you pointing that out. These are real, they're not numbers, they're real people.
Absolutely.
And so, and one thing I want to touch on is there's a lot of concerns that I hear about what's in that vaccine. Mm-hmm. Don't give me, I don't want all that stuff. And that's a fair statement because there are some things in vaccines. So one myth that I want to debunk real quick is that the vaccine really don't have a lot of extra stuff in it at all. In fact, as it relates to Pfizer and Moderna, you're really just getting messenger RNA, that lipid bilayer that has to protect and cover the messenger RNA, and you may get a little water and a little sugar. I know that's hard for a low-carb guy to say, maybe.
That's right.
A little sugar may be in there. That's probably the only reaction I have.
Yeah. Fact check.
That's right. What's going on? And in fact, the reason why we have to have it so cold is because that lipid bilayer has to be held at certain temperatures. For Moderna, minus 20 Celsius, and for Pfizer, around minus 70 Celsius. So the point is, you keeping it cold because you don't have preservatives, right? Sure. So for those out there who are concerned about that, don't worry about that. But the other thing I want to ask you as a healthcare administrator, it seems like keeping it that cold is pretty difficult. So how did you guys prepare to store this vaccine at those types of temperatures?
Yeah, that's the beauty of being a part of a health system, honestly. And so central distribution, we didn't necessarily have to worry about that here at Trinity and South Sub, working hub and spoke sort of process, whereas we're working with our sister facilities. Our shipments were coming in from Illinois Masonic. So very grateful of that. And oftentimes I tell people size does matter, because some people say size doesn't matter. No.
I hear that a lot from our leaders. We need scale.
We need scale. Right? Size matter because you can lean your areas of vulnerability, and you can leverage your areas of strength.
That's right.
And to a much wider net. And so we believe in size and scale, and especially in healthcare.
I love it. So thank you for sharing that. And another myth that is out there, and I'm sure you've heard this, I don't want to have a reaction because I don't want to die from getting the vaccine, right? And I always tell patients the virus, as you suggested earlier when we had our conversation, the virus is worse than any potential reaction. But the reality is there's not a lot of anaphylaxis type reactions. Those are the reactions that really can make you sick that are occurring. In fact, I heard recently that it may only have been in the 20s, the number in the whole country, maybe 21 or so. But on average, I've heard that no more than 1 out of 100,000 doses given can have led to anaphylaxis. And so, and none of those people have died. So that's something I want people to hear. But the other piece is we give penicillin often, and the chances of getting a reaction from penicillin is 1 out of 8,000. So, but in my experience, my patients never ask me to deal with this so-called concern about penicillin. They don't even ask the question. So you have a 12 times higher chance of having a reaction with penicillin than you do with the COVID vaccine. So I think it's really important that we keep that in mind. And this other thing about, well, if I have allergies, I shouldn't really get the vaccine. And when the CDC first came out with the concern about allergies, they did initially say, hey, let's pause on that. And they had to do a little research. What they found, though, after doing the research is that, in fact, a lot of people in our health system probably had allergy histories and things like that, but we didn't have any issues. So what they found is that that 1 out of 100,000 includes all of us, right? So it's still, so even if we have people with those types of reactions, they are able to get the vaccine. The only caveat is that if you're walking around with an EpiPen, you probably shouldn't get it at the local pharmacy. Right. You should probably go to at minimally the clinic, right, and ideally the hospital, where, we're in a hospital office attached to the hospital. So I think that's the way to go. So from your perspective, Rashard, what measures has the hospital taken to make sure that if somebody gets sick, you guys are ready to react to that?
Yeah, and I have to give kudos to our chief nursing officers at both hospitals, at Advocate Trinity as well as Advocate South Suburban, and Advocate Trinity is Dr. Gwendolyn Oglesby Odom, and at Advocate South Sub is Sharon Otten, and they've really spearheaded this whole vaccination clinic, working with our system leadership, ensuring that we work on the logistics and we work on the scheduling, the timing, the spacing, the social distancing, et cetera. Right. And then we also have clinicians that are there and for a period of 15 to 30 minutes after you receive the vaccination that are there to hold, and you're in a holding space and they're monitoring you and ensuring that everything's okay.
Yeah, they definitely helped me. I was there.
Yeah.
Had some good conversations, but
They did the same to me because I was trying to take pictures with our heroes.
That's right.
And they were like, yeah, we know you're the president, but you're going to sit right here until everything's fine. And I'm grateful of them. And so they've done a really tremendous job taking care of and ensuring that if the need for acute care is there, that we can get our rapid response team and we can appropriately take care of our community.
Absolutely.
So at both places, we haven't had to operationalize that. Right, so it's to your point earlier, it's the chances of that are slim.
That's right. That's right. And we definitely know what to do. But even when we do code blues and stuff, we review those things, and many clinicians have reviewed what would be necessary. But it's fairly straightforward because we have to, again, give penicillin shots. So let's think about another thing that people worry about is, you have a completely different process for this, and we have to have teams to vaccinate all of these people, and they also have their day job, right? So what did you guys do to address the staffing issues to make sure that we had the right people there to get the job done and do it safely?
This is a fluid situation, but great question. As you can imagine, we have to be very nimble. And I said it to a team. It'll show my age. I told them we had to be like Gumby, So you get that, right?
Yeah,
but we have to be very. But size and scale matters as well in this situation because the most powerful resource you have in any organization or any sports team is your human capital. Right. And so the larger your size, the more you can, flex those resources and move them where you need them.
Okay.
So we're blessed with that. But the other thing I saw over the weekend was I saw a post come out from Advocate Aurora, and it was announcing volunteers that we're looking to bring in, people who from the community may want to come in and help the heroes on the front line and not administering the vaccine, but sort of help with the logistics and, all the things that go along into running an efficient clinic. So those are just a few ideas, and we continue to monitor that closely on a day-to-day basis and on an hourly basis, to be honest.
Yeah, it was so much change occurring that we were having meetings. It felt like, even as a frontline clinician, it just felt like, I think we're having meetings like every day, every other day, kind of an update. So it's slowing down a little bit, but absolutely have to do all of that. So, and I guess since we're answering questions that I'm hearing, I guess we're going to do a little bit of a reverse. So I don't know if you are an interviewer, but you're about to be one.
All right. Put me on the hot spot.
I got to put you on the hot spot, man. All right. That's right. So I'm sure people you come in contact with, ask you a ton of questions related to COVID, including your family. Take a moment and pause and think about some of the things that you've been asked that maybe needs to come from a clinician like myself. So think about some of that, and let's dive a little into that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this opportunity, because you're right. I get asked a lot of questions, and I have to remind people, I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, but I know a lot of doctors. I work with a lot of doctors.
Sports guy. Did you see Stephen A. Smith? He actually does something on General Hospital or something. Did you know that?
So I didn't know that.
I'm going to send that to you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Stephen A. Smith. So he plays a role on TV now.
Okay.
You're going to, anyway.
I can only imagine him being the character.
He's so good, man.
Yeah,
anyway,
he's a character.
That's right.
So one of the things, as I've been rounding and going into various units, I was with our environmental service workers, our EVS workers, and one of them asked me a question in terms of the mutations of this virus.
That's been in the news.
And these have been identified in the UK and in Africa. What are your thoughts on how this will impact us, and will this vaccine still work?
Yeah, I was very afraid when I started hearing about mutations, although I did have to pause and realize, almost all these organisms are going to have mutations, right? So, and I learned a lot about that recently in school because we had, lectures to talk about, mutations. But the short answer is that the mutated versions of the virus are not really making people sicker, but they are spreading easier. So it's about a 55% higher rate of spread. And so you're going to have more cases because of that, which ultimately can lead to more deaths. But the good news is that the vaccine appears to be working just fine. So I think the way I look at it is that you have the virus is made in such or the vaccine's made in such a way that you have all these subtypes. Like it's not just one little antibody. They have multiple subtypes of antibodies. So they have figured out a way to attack the virus very aggressively while also increasing the number of your T cells and your B cells and something called phagocytosis where you engulf it. So it's actually multiple mechanisms by which the vaccine helps us. And the thing to remember is that mutations may only affect about 1% of the vaccine. So that other 99% that it has not mutated, your body, your antibodies will, or your immune system will identify with this vaccine. Now, having said that, the way I see it is like, you have kids, it's like, they're hiding, they're doing hide and seek, right? They're hiding behind something, but you see arms and legs and they think you can't see them, right? But the reality is the antibody can still see them. So
I love that analogy because as I share with you, we have 4 kids. So there's a lot of hiding. There's a lot of, everything you can imagine is going on in the house, Yeah. So that's awesome. And I'm a visual person. So
that's right. Well, one more thing that's really cool is that why we have to do a shout out to the pharmaceuticals. They're already working on vaccines to deal with the mutations. Also, so we may end up having to get boosters or whatever. So they can easily adapt to those mutations. Awesome. So don't freak out about that. But anyway, let's think about some other things you've had to deal with or hear.
Yeah. Another thing that's come up is in reference to, I've had one of our team members tell me, well, I had COVID and I've recovered. Do I need to take it or am I good? And then on the flip side of that, I've had some team members say, my immune system is strong. I never get sick. I'm healthy. I don't have any comorbidities.
Right.
I'm just going to, let my immune system do its thing. Right. So on both sides of that spectrum, what do you say?
Well, first of all, I wasn't a big, strong football player. I grew up playing tennis, okay? So y'all football players, y'all not right.
Arthur Ashe.
Literally, that's who I thought I was going to be.
There you go.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be Arthur Ashe, and I ended up doing this instead.
Well, hold on. I got to give you a funny story on this, right? So, just true story. This happened. I posted it on Instagram on my story. It happened a few weeks ago. We were in Miami at home, and I woke up. My daughter, soon to be 13-year-old, she calls me old man, and she challenges me to a tennis match.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I got down there, and I told her, you're gonna realize that I'm the young version of Arthur Ashe.
So you talking stuff.
So it's right. So you could just picture how that played out.
Did that work out? Did you actually win?
Oh, hey, listen, I'm super competitive.
Oh, right? Really?
Yeah,
so okay.
I'll take my grandmother out in Scrabble. I can't help it. I am super competitive.
Yeah, you sound like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, I'm just telling you.
Okay, that's cool. That's good to know. So when we end up in that situation, I know what I'm dealing with. So. Wow. So, when you think about what you just asked me, I think about the patients I've already lost. I've had some, death certificates to sign. And yes, some of the death certificates I've signed were people who were actually healthy. So, and then I talked to my barber, and I know your brother. Shout out to your brother again. Right. What did you say his nickname was again?
Pooh.
Man, that's crazy.
Oh, listen. You always know if you're genuinely from the hood by the nicknames. So I got a brother named Pooh. I have an uncle named Silk. I have an uncle named Quick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And they call me Cooley.
Oh my God.
That's my nickname.
So I'm done with you.
It's a term of endearment.
Right.
As you know.
Good. Right.
Okay.
So
sorry, that's a Black history lesson.
That's right. I love it, man. And I talked to my barber who's here, And he told me of a 45 and a 55-year-old, both who went to Vegas, and they were healthy. They contracted COVID and both ended up dying from the disease within a couple of weeks of coming back. So let me tell you how I look at this, healthy versus unhealthy perspective, right? So I want you to use your imagination for this. Imagine you are healthy. You are doing a good job protecting your nest. That's my thing, right? You eat well, you exercise, you get enough sleep, etc. Okay, so not getting the vaccine is like sitting at home with your T helper and killer cells and maybe your B cells, which are all part of your immune system, hanging out. You're just doing your thing, watching TV, Netflix, eating dinner. And then when the virus attacks, it knocks your door down to get to you. And you're strong. They're probably football player versions of them. Your T cells and your B cells and other components of your immune system, they partner and they fight the fight for you, right? But the virus was kind of caught, or your immune system was kind of caught off guard. So sometimes, you said this earlier, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And if you're a healthier person, you have a good chance of winning. However, now imagine you've gotten a vaccine and you have these new antibodies who are not sitting in the house just hanging out with you watching TV. Instead, they're literally sitting on the outside of the house, guns cocked, ready to kill the virus before they even get a chance to get in the house. And the bonus is that their gun has a laser on it that's specifically designed to target the virus. The second bonus is that they are so good at doing a job that you have about a 90 to 94% chance of taking that virus out. In fact, they're so good that you'll probably be sitting at home watching Netflix and then you won't even know there's a fight going on outside.
Wow.
So what this vaccine does is it allows your body to be prepared in advance with something specifically designed to deal with this virus. And in most cases, even if you get exposed, you won't even know it.
Wow.
Versus sitting there with them football players talking about y'all enjoying the meal and then somebody knocking the door down. So for me, I try to give a visual for my patients so they'll understand. I would prefer to have somebody outside my house fighting for me.
Absolutely.
It's just a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how I see that. So what else you got for me?
This is my last question.
Go ahead.
Last question.
You're doing good as a new podcast.
Listen, this is all authentic.
Okay, that's cool.
But these are real conversations that, as I'm walking the floors and rounding and engaging with our heroes, these are conversations that we're having, which is what I love, because they feel as though they can open up and have these, and that's what we want. We want a safe space. So the last question that I have is that we have the Pfizer, we have Moderna, and then there's Johnson & Johnson that may be coming. So a few other things. There's various different vaccines.
They just made like lotion. And
no, they do. They have multiple revenue streams going in, right? And then this vaccination is on the horizon, right?
All right.
And so, is there a particular vaccine that's better than the other vaccine,
right?
Or more effective?
Right.
What do you say to people who? Because I've been asked that question as well.
That's a fair question, and I definitely. By the way, just so people know, a lot of people are really asking for the vaccine, and these are people of color, so people are starting to come around. So hopefully this will only add to our conversation. But yeah, it's true that Moderna is about 94% effective, or really close to 95%. And that's after the second dose. Pfizer is around 90% effective after the second dose. So, and these are historically effective levels. Now, the MMR, mumps, measles, rubella, the measles component is 97% effective, which is amazing, and 88% for mumps. So that is an effective vaccine. But other than MMR, you're not going to find vaccines this effective. So I have a basic rule of thumb, right? You take the vaccine that's available to you. It's that simple, because, you really are going to be, we talked about that scenario about having somebody fight for you on the outside of your house. You really want to get that protection. And even when we start approving the other vaccines, the AstraZeneca one, which is probably in a 70 to 8% range effectiveness or so. And then the Johnson & Johnson, you're going to get great protection, and any kind of protection is better than no protection. And you just want to have those troops ready to fight for you. So, and I just want to do a shout out to AstraZeneca because their vaccine is only $2.18 per dose.
Wow.
Which is amazing, right?
Wow.
And then Pfizer's around 20 and Moderna's around 22 to 38. Either way, I like all of them. But I just wanted to say that because with the newer vaccines that are coming out, they're going to be cheaper. You're not going to have to worry about freezing them. So when you think about those poorer communities, when you think about countries that are struggling financially, when you think about rural communities in the United States, we are now going to be able to give them access to vaccines without having this fancy Advocate Aurora freezer thing that we have, in an urban sprawl. So I think that's going to be great. So overall, the simple message, whichever one is available to you, get that vaccine. Do not hesitate. And right now we're trying, hopefully with the new administration, we can, ratchet things up and get this done faster. So I really appreciate it. I know we're at the hour. You're a busy guy and you have that daughter that's looking, probably texting you right now. Yeah. So we're going to let's wrap this thing up. But I do want to wrap up with what I typically ask people. And that's, how you're going to protect your nest. I know we talked about this when you did your episode a ways back, but, has any of that changed? What are you going to do to protect your nest? Rather it's nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep, relationships, organisms to avoid, pollution to avoid, emotions, life experience. What are you going to really focus on over next year?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a very important subject. This is actually something that a group of my guys, family members and friends that I've known since 5 years old, from Liberty City, Carroll City, inner city guys. And now we have this thing called the Power Circle, and we literally text each other back and forth every day, whether we're talking about investments, whether we're talking about our wives and how we, our families, et cetera, and different things that we're doing, just encouraging each other positively. And I share it with them that the 2020, even in the midst of the pandemic, the silver lining in this, or the blessing in this pandemic, has been, it's shown me the light to get closer to my family. So it's about relationships. I didn't realize how distant I was, or how absent, if you will, I was from just the day-to-day things within my family, because it's hospitals are 24/7.
Well, it's two hospitals.
It's two hospitals. There you go. Wow. And two hospitals, med staffs and surgeons, and not that doctors are high maintenance, but
yes, they are. Yeah. I can say that.
I'm gonna let you say that. Yeah, well, I don't disagree with you. Right. But and then I'm very passionate about this. This is what I feel is my calling and my purpose in life. Yeah. And so when you have a passion, it doesn't feel like work.
Right.
And so it's not work for me. It's my passion. And so I'm all into it. Right. And so it's early in the morning. I'm first one up. I'm working out. I'm out of the house before they get up. And then, late night, leaving here in the evening, then I'm going and I was doing dinners and meetings with
I could imagine.
Various external key stakeholders. And so until, God just sort of shut down the world and everything became virtual. And now all those external things don't exist.
Right, that's right.
And I'm coming home. And Donidra said something, and she probably didn't know it was as powerful as it was. She was like, wow, I got my husband back.
Wow.
Right.
You were just grinding.
And I was just grinding. I was, for me, coming from nothing and being in a room where you see everything that's available now, you're exposed to this. Right. You're like, man, I want my family for generations to have this access. And not only that, but I want to open up this for some other families who are beyond these boardroom doors that never see this.
That's right.
And so there isn't a day that I'm not amazed and blessed and so grateful. And that's why I smile a lot. I got I saw all my teeth because God is so awesome.
That's right.
You grow up,
I love it.
I buried or jailed more than 25 of my friends before the age of 21.
That's insane.
And I was talking to,
wow.
I kid you not. So I was talking to one of my friends who's incarcerated now, has a college degree, got caught up in the system.
That's right.
And we were talking a couple of days ago, and he was just saying how proud, just watching me. And I was like, we didn't know any of this exists. And he and I have been together. We were together every day in high school.
That was your buddy. Yeah.
Right. And there's so many other stories like that. So anyway, those things aren't lost on me, right? Those things, if you look in my office, you don't see awards. You see things that aspire me to keep pushing. That's because it reminds me of the struggle of where you come from. Right. And so for me, I realized that I need to be home more often. And I thank God for that part of it. So my part of the nest is based on relationships moving forward, and promise that I made to my wife that I got to be there for dinner. I gotta do date night. I gotta be better in that arena because there are my family's to whom much is given, much is required, and so there's no doubt about that. There's a lot is required, but my family's taking the brunt of a lot of my passion and my dream to do what I do. And so I gotta give them the flowers.
You got to give it to them. And most people will look at your title and they'll look at your accomplishments, but are you willing to make those sacrifices?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Even some of the things I've had to do. I know I start clinic at 8, but a lot of times I'm in the building at 6, and just like you said, grinding towards whatever you're trying to achieve. So I appreciate those comments, and you choosing the R, the rope, the R is really critical. And without those folks in your life, why are we even doing this stuff in the first place? Right.
I agree.
So I love that.
100. 100.
So we'll get you out of here. Final thoughts before we make it official.
I just want to, and this is a shameless plug, but I think for us as men of color, proud Black men from the communities that we've raised in, to be in an organization like Advocate Aurora Health is a tremendous blessing. And so for those who don't know, Advocate Aurora Health stepped out and publicly announced and a declaration that racism is a public health care crisis. And we were the first to do so, and 38 other health systems joined us through the Healthcare Anchor Network. And through this, we made a pledge that we were going to hire clinicians that reflect the community and team members that reflect the community. We're going to hire persons of color in leadership positions to make a change. We're also going to lower the attrition of persons of color to ensure that we're keeping and retaining our minority talent, increase the investments in minority businesses and in the community, and also just combat healthcare disparities in the communities we're so blessed to serve. I am so proud, and I know you are as well, to be a part of Advocate Aurora Health, and even for their blessing for us to have this platform. Because I think I just shared the story earlier of there are plenty of people who are in positions of power that look like us that feel as though I can't speak or I'll be castrated.
Right.
And so that's powerful for me. So that's my final thought. I'm grateful for that. And I look forward to getting this message out into our community and saving lives and changing lives. And that's our passion. I know we share that same passion together. So it's an absolute honor and a pleasure. And I love you, brother.
Well, I appreciate that. And I was so excited when we thought about doing this, and now we've done it. And again, like you, I hope it touches some lives. So, I'll give you a bump or a namaste.
Yeah,
doing
that's
some
right.
social distancing right now.
Right.
But
elbows,
kick the feet, whatever. Hit you in the chest, whatever.
Kid and play. I took you back.
You're killing me.
I took you back.
Let me gather my thoughts, because you're killing me. So, but appreciate you. And let me give a few final thoughts as we wrap up. And, we really started this podcast reminding you of the E in the rope, one of which refers us to life experiences. if you are still listening to this podcast, we've added another life experience by sharing ours. And as we learn new things, we should nudge ourselves towards actions that better serve us. So I want to definitely do another shout out, as Rashard has done, to our health system. I do remember when we gave a knee. And when you put your knee down for 8 minutes or so for George Floyd because of his death, you really understand how long he had a knee on his neck. So I'm just thankful that our health system had all of us to do that. And I also want to celebrate the fact that we're now having conversations, safe conversations around race-related issues. We had never done that before. So people have opportunity to do that. And of course, we have a diversity council, and it's really helping us to identify all the gaps that we need to fill. And we're both going to be doing some mentoring. So we have a fellowship program and a mentoring program. So those who are from communities of color have an opportunity to benefit from that. So I really appreciate you, Rashard, in doing that. I certainly look forward to doing it myself. And I really hope anybody listening who's in an organization, I would ask that you encourage your organization to do the same. So keep in mind that today's episode was not a political statement about whether you should get the COVID-19 vaccine. Rashard and I only wanted to make sure anyone who has not decided to vaccinate are fully aware of the racist histories that may be impacting that decision. And of course, to remove some of the myths that are still circulating on social media between friends and family and elsewhere about the vaccine. We only hope that this information will add to what you already know, so that as you make your own decision, it is grounded in as much knowledge as you will need to make the best decision for you and your family. One thing I love about living in a free country, in spite of its flaws, is that we are all able to choose what's best for us, and no one else can make that decision for us. So as a doc who focuses on wellness, I strongly encourage you to follow the protecting your nest principles. And if you do, you give yourself the best chance to live this life well and to fight whatever your body may face in the future. So as we wrap up, I want to ask you to continue to be safe, be well, and to continue to protect your nest. You've been listening to Protecting Your Nest with Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com.